You're watching The Ready Writer, a show where I get to speak to writers of all different genres, mediums, and experiences. The Ready Writer. Are you ready? Hey, it's time for another episode of The Ready Writer. I am your host, Casey Bell, and today's guest is James Weeks. Let's get the show started. All right, so first question. You are an author. Was that something you wanted to be as a child, or was this something that happened later on in life?
So no, it wasn't something that I wanted to do as a child. It was my first love was airplanes, aviation. That's that's all that I cared about. So eventually later in life, I did earn my private pilot's license. That was all I thought about. So it wasn't until um, I met my wife this is around 1986, 1987, and she said, "Oh, you have a gift." This was in the Virgin Islands where I'm from. She said, "Oh, you have a talent for words. Maybe you should consider writing." So before then, though, before she said that, I had been doing just some writing, just some expression. But when she said that, she had encouraged me to do an article for a local newspaper on the island of St. Croix, where I'm from. And that eventually turned into a job. So, and so what I did was I started writing feature pieces for that newspaper. And then I went on to another newspaper. And then when I moved to the United States in around 1989, some of my works were published in a national magazine, parenting magazine. So I was published in a number of publications. Um, and and then as time evolved over a period of time, as I made my journey into spirituality, and I created a Facebook page to support a film that I'm working on across the Kings River. And I started sharing affirmations. People started to ask me, well, do you have a book? You know, we like your affirmations. Do you have a book? Right. And then out of that demand, um, I created my first book, Meditations Across the Kings River, African Inspired Wisdom for Life's Journey. That's how the evolution from began, you know, to where I am today.
That's a nice journey. So, when you got so many requests, first, did you have any hesitations, or did you jump right in? And then second, what did you do?
No hesitation because the demand was so strong. So people were creating their own books actually out of some of my affirmations. And this, when I say they were creating their own books, what they were doing is that they would maybe type up some of these affirmations on a sheet of paper, look at it in the mirror when they would surround themselves with it. So the demand was there, so there was no hesitation. But what I didn't know at the time is, even though the demand was there and I had this desire that, okay, I'm going to do this, it didn't become clear to me how exactly I wanted to do it until the year 2016, when I traveled to the Caribbean island of Guadeloupe. And I met beautiful young lady who is from Guadeloupe, and she started to share her culture with me. And while I was on the island, I just had um, such strong spiritual experiences. It made me reflect on life, made me reflect on my own Caribbean heritage, made me reflect on my African heritage, made me reflect on cuisine that I grew up eating, cuisines that I love. And then from that experience of just being on that island, that's where I got the genesis of, okay, now I know how I want to put the book together. And so the book became just a collection of essays that were mostly inspired by that one experience on Guadeloupe. And then I went to Jamaica also. And then I eventually went to Hawaii, and that's where I met the brilliant artist who designed the cover of my book. So I would say that all along I was led by spiritual forces, right? So no hesitation, but I just didn't know until I went to Guadeloupe how I was to put that book together.
But that said, what was your journey like? What did you find out? How did you find out how to publish a book?
Okay, so as far as how to publish a book, um, I was aware of Balboa Press and the types of books that they tend to publish, self-help type books or books of a spiritual nature. Balboa Press is a subdivision of Hay House, right? And so I did not spend a lot of time like searching for like a publisher. I just said, well, this company does books of this type of genre, right? And so I said, this is where I decided to publish, right? In later this year, we're going to be republishing the book through another publisher at some point later this year. But that was how I did it initially.
During your many books you've published, what were some of the things you learned that you didn't necessarily know that may have been a challenge for you, or things that kind of made you go, "Oh my goodness, this is what publishing a book is about"?
Um, so I wouldn't say I wouldn't say that along my journey I encountered like some like great obstacles per se that said like, oh my God, I didn't know this was involved, because I always knew, but I have over the years, I developed a consistent writing practice. Uh, Mostly like, for example, on my Facebook page, Across the Kings River, I I've been doing daily posts consistently like for the last 10 years straight, right? 10 years straight, no matter what. So on the day my mother died, I still shared a post. Why? Because I've I've come to realize that people are in need of inspiration. And so I do that daily to provide upliftment and encouragement to others. So for me, I look at everything I do from a long-term point of view. Nothing for me is short-term. I look at things, okay, if it takes a year, it takes a year. If it takes 2 years, it takes 2 years. It takes 5 years, it takes 5 years. It takes 10 years, it takes 10 years. It takes 20 years, then it takes 20 years. So for me, the process of writing a book was not difficult in that sense because I have the consistency and the discipline. And I would say also, most important, I would say love. Um, in that, for me, if there were moments when I didn't feel like writing, I thought about the people I met along my journey. And for me, it became a journey of love because I was writing the book for them. I wasn't writing the book for me. So I was able to take myself out of whatever I felt emotionally. And I started to focus on, okay, the people that I met. I started to focus on, if this is my last day on earth, what would I want to say? You know, what would I want others to know? How might they benefit? Now, what would I say about what I've learned? I would say um, what I'm about to say is something that I say for all things, that consistency is important. You know, dedication is important. Um, Vision is important. And the way how I see it, all of us have some type of gift, right? And it is our obligation to bring this gift forward and to, I'm going to say this, to stop making excuses for why we can't do this or why we can't do this or why we can't, you know, accomplish this. And so on my journey, one of the things I recognize is that people are always looking for a way out, a reason to stop doing what they said they were going to do, right? And for a lot of people, unfortunately, the minute some challenge comes, then it's, oh, I must not be meant to do this because look, I'm faced with this obstacle. I'm faced with this challenge. Maybe this is not for me. I should stop this. And then what they eventually do is then they start something else, probably. And then they don't do that because guess what? Some other challenge arises. And then it becomes, oh, I must not be meant to do that because look, if I was meant to do that, then it would have been easier, right? So I'm all about, you know, moving forward and recognizing also what we have control over and what we don't have control over, and staying focused on the things that we do have control over.
I like that. Um, so you basically answered the next question. I don't know if you want to go into detail.
Okay.
I believe that's the book behind you. I see.
Yes.
The title and the inspiration behind it.
Yes. Yes. Oh, so the inspiration, so the title. So the title Across the King's River actually comes from a West African proverb um, uh, that comes from the Yoruba people of Southwest Nigeria, right? And I practice their spiritual tradition. But anyway, so one day a good friend of mine who is from that tribe, Yorubas, he taught me a proverb. And basically what the proverb says is, if a king tells you, if a king gives you a command or king gives you an order or command, you can't go back to the king and say you're not going to do it, right? Because in the olden days, especially in this culture, but in other cultures around the world, the king was just such a supreme figure, right? A king says, well, this is what you have to do. You can't go back and say, well, no, you're not doing it, right? And then the proverb goes on to say, but the river is full, right? And what that means is that there could be danger in what the king is actually doing. Not because the king's trying to put you in a dangerous position, right? But because whatever you ask to do, there might be some risk involved, right? And then the proverb ends by saying, but the king has already said what you have to do. So it's a proverb of like the crossroads, like where when we are at the crossroads of life, when we have a decision to make, it's also like a crossroads proverb, like, well, what do we do now? And the proverb sounds like this: Ishe oba koshemaje obaronishe odobakum. Ishe oba koshemaje koshenko. And what that means is what I said. The king has asked you to do something, but the river is full. There's some risk involved. But then the proverb ends with this: oh, but the king has said that this must be done. So when I think about that proverb, I think of the king as being a higher force than us. In my case, not in my case, in my opinion, I think of a king as being like our soul, you know? I feel our soul is a higher power, right? Or depending on one spiritual tradition, or God is the higher power, or just the higher power, whatever the higher power is to us. The higher power could be a vision, it could be a mission. I'm going to fight for civil rights. I'm going to do my best to alleviate poverty. It could be, I'm going to launch this campaign to help cancer patients. It could be, you know what, I'm going to work on behalf of endangered animals around the world. The king is whatever it is we want it to be. But when we listen to that higher power, we must understand that, well, there's a risk involved. And so we have to decide, well, what's more important, our fears or the higher mission? And so this goes back to also what I said about facing obstacles and challenges, because for many of us, we have it in our heads that if we're being asked to do something, or if we're being challenged to fulfill our life's purpose, whatever it is, well, then there's no challenge. That, the way how a lot of us see it is, well, then things are just going to roll over and people are going to say yes. Or the money, let's say we start a business, well, then the money's going to just start rolling in, or whatever the case may be. Let's say we're musical artists and we think, well, then, we're going to get these global requests to be on concert stage tomorrow, or whatever it is. We forget that, no, there is a risk, right? But is that where you want to stop with your fears, or with insecurities? Is that where we stop? Or do we push through? Do we push beyond that, right? And so to me, this is what the proverb is trying to inspire us to do, is that, no, all of us, every single one of us, not some of us, we have some type of calling, right? Or some type of gift, or some type of obligation to help someone else. Are we going to do that? Or are we going to allow whatever is happening in our personal lives stop us from doing the things that we can do and that we should do, right? So it's a proverb that just comes with a high degree of inspiration, that, hey, no, let's push through. let's do what it is that we were asked to do for real, for real.
Yes, I definitely believe I had to figure this out for myself. The reason why so many people quit is because we now live in a quick society. So you don't have to wait a week to mail someone something and then respond. You know, they get a text in seconds, they can respond back. Microwaves, like all our technology is so quick that people are so used to things being quick that they think that they're gonna, start the music business today and tomorrow get a Grammy and things of that nature. They don't realize it takes time and you don't quit. You gotta, however, it's 10, 50, 20 years, you gotta, keep going. And so what I know you said your books are filled, and you're on Facebook, you were putting words of affirmation and quotes and things of that nature. How does someone, or how can someone not just read that and go, that's good, actually read it and then apply it to their life to understand that it's not a overnight success type of thing. Whatever I'm doing, whatever higher power I'm following, how do I get to the point of understanding it's not going to be overnight and I shouldn't quit just because it's not overnight?
I feel, and this is something that I always share with, because I'm also a spiritual coach. I feel it's important to have, again, no matter what our spiritual path might be, I think it's important to have some type of daily spiritual practice to get in touch with ourselves. I think this is very, very important. So when I talk about the spiritual practice, I mean, it could be whatever it is that resonates with us, that helps us feel more connected to ourselves. For some people, it might be prayer. For some people, it might be meditation. For some people, maybe it might be just sitting in silence, For some people, it might be they're going to read the Bible, or they're going to read whatever sacred scripture that inspires them in some way. But I feel it's important that we get in touch with ourselves on a daily basis, which is, again, but this is not something that a lot of people do. Why is that? It's because we don't. For a lot of us, self-care is not something that we practice so much. So we get up, for most people, and it's, well, I have to go to work. I have to just eat something quickly. I have to get out the door. Or if I'm a mom, well, I have to get my kids ready for school. And then you're back from work, or whatever the case may be. But then a whole day goes by, but there's no check-in with our own psyche, our own spirit. This puts us in a position of weakness. This puts us in a position of just constant overwhelm, where we never get around to just getting in touch with what our own spirit is saying. So I think that's part of it, part of the answer. And then the second part, I would say, is having some type of discipline, that we're going to be consistent with whatever it is that we say we wish to do. And so going back to like what you said, the question that you asked me more directly, I would say is that for all of us to get to the next level in life, whatever that next level looks like for us, whether it's creatively, whether it's financially, whatever it is, to get closer to what our potential is we have to be willing to shift something about ourselves. And we have to be willing to continue shifting it. We have to change something. But the issue is that for many of us, we say we want this, or we say we want that. But we don't want to change a single thing really about our life. We want to achieve it by being exactly, more or less, the same way we are. So we don't want to work too hard, for example. We don't want to put ourselves in any position where we feel uncomfortable or where we feel vulnerable. So then we don't do it. We don't want to discipline ourselves. And so the issue for a lot of people is there might be mentors around them who can genuinely, legitimately help them get to the next level, but they won't do anything the mentor says. They really won't. They will not listen to that mentor at all. They won't take advantage of the accumulated wisdom, the knowledge base that mentor has. They won't do that. And so what I've come to realize is, and this goes back to human potential, right? Is that as humans, we tend to do what we want to do, right? But we won't do what we need to do. And because we won't do what we need to do, we never arrive at that higher level. We never arrive at that place of abundance where we could live at, for example, financially or whatever. We never arrive at that place of fulfillment. We never arrive at that place of empowerment because we refuse to do what we need to do. Why? It's because it's easier to do what we want to do. So going back to your question is that, sure, I could have a book with guidance and even financial tips, which I include in my book. But unless we embrace these things, unless we put them into action, well, then we should expect our lives to remain the same. I mean, honestly.
Right. So I believe I heard you earlier, you said you wrote a film?
So I'm still working on the film. The film is the same title, Across the Kings River, Finding and Fulfilling Your Life's Purpose. So I actually began the journey of the film before the book came out. So when I created the Facebook page, it was because, well, I started working on this film. And at that time, when I first started building that page, social media wasn't what it is now. It was still kind of like in its infancy, so to speak. It wasn't, and they were saying, well, if you're an artist, blah, blah, you need a page. And so I said, well, since I need a page, let me get this page started. And so initially when I started that page, it was to support my film, right? But then as time went on, it became more of a place where I would provide inspiration to others, right? It became less about that and not about that at all, so to speak. It became more about, okay, every day I will try to provide some upliftment to others because, I've come to realize that no matter who we are or where we are in life, all of us are in need of inspiration. All of us we're in need of a way to look at where we are in life in a different ways, right? So sometimes the problem isn't so much what it is we're facing, but it's how we're looking at it. And sometimes the way how we're looking at our challenges is worse than the actual problem itself. The problem is really smaller than the way we're looking at it. And this is why we stay stuck or frustrated or we become trapped, right? But it's how we're looking at the issue. And so why inspiration is so important is because it can help us look at it in a different way, in a different light, so that we can recognize, no, I mean, what do this instead, or think about it this way instead, or recognize that, no, you're not alone, or recognize that maybe this thing that did not go in your favor really is going in your favor. Maybe this is the best outcome, right? So it's about shifting our perceptions.
That's definitely something I had to learn. There were many times I had problems and it seemed big, I guess, because I didn't have the solution at the time. So it seemed bigger. I was crying. I was like overly emotional. And when it was solved, I was like, oh, that wasn't even a problem to, go crazy about. And I had to learn when I do have problems, just chill. It's been solved in the past. It's not a big deal. And so, yes, it's a habit, I guess, that we look at problems much bigger than they really are. So last question, what advice would you give someone during this? I mean, it's been 2 years now. People are still, their mind is not where it needs to be with this pandemic. And now we have a war going on in Europe. People are, I guess, pessimistic, not realizing that now is the time to really, get whatever it is you're doing, now is the time to do it. And now is the time to create more positivity in your life and for other people, your community, things of that nature. And so what advice would you give someone who is down and out and don't think there really is no future for them, no good future?
I love that question. I would say one of the things I would say is to get in touch with what they love or what moves them the most. And here again, even as I say that, that's where it does take some type of spiritual understanding of oneself, right? To get in touch with what we feel inspired about. I believe there's something for everyone. It could be a song. I mean, as we look at our day, as we look at our life, what do we feel, what seems to be calling our attention the most? So the key word is the most. and then to start moving in that direction to what seems to be touching your spirit the most. Because what is touching our spirit the most is, in my opinion, it's usually some type of inspiration. And so I feel that if we could tune into inspiration long enough, well, then something beautiful can come out of it. And so all that I do mostly is I follow inspiration. That's the only thing that I pay attention to. And so while this war going on, and I sympathize, I empathize with, for example, people that are suffering, what I choose to focus on many times is, okay, what do I have control over? And where is my inspiration coming from? And how can I bring inspiration forward? This is my focus. The other thing I would say is that one of the things that is important to me, what I've realized that keeps me going in life, is this realization. When you look at in this case, any country that's at war, it doesn't matter what the country is. The attention has been on the Ukraine, even though so many other countries are at war too, right? Right? One of the things that fascinates me about life is this. In any situation, in any war-torn country, you will still find that there are people there who are still creating music. They're still creating dance. Even as bombs fall out the sky, people are still creating poetry, right? Under those circumstances. Not only that, but it goes deeper than that, in my opinion. Why? Because even under those conditions, people still fall in love. Imagine that. A drone might be dropping in a village, and someone might be walking down the street and see someone. They make a connection, some type of eye contact. Next thing you know, they're in touch. They love that person, even if they don't know what their future is going to look like. Even in those countries where war is going on, people still make love. Babies are still being born. Babies still are born in those. Yes, people are dying, but guess what? Babies are being born too, even in those conditions. So what that tells me is that this journey that we're all on, life, is continuous. It goes on, even in the darkest of circumstances. This life goes on. And so one of the things that I think is important for all of us to realize is that even as there are atrocities happening on a day-to-day basis in any country, in any society, I'm in California. Just last week, there was a shooting in Sacramento. As far as I know, 6 people were dead. There might be more by now. Other people were hurt. But the most important thing is that miracles are still happening around the world. They happen every day too. Yes, atrocities happen, but every day there are people on planet Earth that genuinely do care about each other and genuinely do love each other. And that every day on planet Earth, there are people who go out of their way to help someone else. And many times they don't want anything from themselves. They just do it out of the spirit of love. Every day on planet Earth, someone is healed somewhere, somehow. Every day on planet Earth, someone becomes awakened or transformed somehow. Spiritually, they wake up, they get the realization that I don't have to live like this. I don't have to continue doing what I've been doing. I could start doing this instead. You see, so the short message to me is that there's always light happening on planet Earth too. There's always love. These things are happening all the time. It's just that we're conditioned not to pay attention to it. And we think these things are we think this type of thing is just wishful thinking. Oh, you're just ignoring. That's what they'll say. Oh, you're just ignoring, you don't have a grip on reality. That's what they'll say. But the reality is there's always healers on planet Earth. There's always people doing the opposite, and I feel that all of these dark things that do happen, they're just our opportunities to grow and become better and to grow stronger and to realize that we can make a difference and to decide what it is our gift is, to get clarity about our gift, our message, and to move forward with that with confidence.
that is all the time we have for you today on The Ready Writer. I want to thank our guest, James Weeks, for stopping on by, and of course, you, the audience, for watching. Thank you. Have a great day.